On behalf of the University of California, Riverside, thank you for tuning in today for our Career Coach workshop focused on how to leverage your strengths. My name is Brock Caput, and I am the Director of Programming and Career Development at UC Riverside's Alumni Association. This Career Coach workshop series is a reimagined series focused on supporting UCR alumni in their career journey and features one of our 5 UCR alumni career coaches today, Diane. For today's event, we're excited to be joined by our UCR alumna who will share her expertise on how to really leverage your strengths in the interview process and in that job search. This program is made possible by the UCR Alumni Association. I encourage you all to take advantage of all the great things that the Alumni Association has to offer, from our virtual and in-person events to getting involved with your local alumni network. Visit alumni.ucr.edu to learn more and to activate your free membership. So throughout today's session, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of our speaker by clicking on the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. For your reference, we will be recording the session today and we'll send it out after the event. If there's anything that you didn't take notes on or anything, don't worry, you'll get a follow-up. So at this point, we'd like to shift our conversation now to get to learn a bit more about the alumna joining us this afternoon. So I'm so pleased to be joined by our special guest speaker, Diane Dreher. We'll begin by having just a brief kind of introduction from her, and then we'll hear from her in a presentation. And then at the end, we'll have that Q&A that I had mentioned earlier. So now I have the privilege of welcoming our speaker this afternoon. So Diane, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you. Would you like to begin by just, briefly introducing yourself and sharing with our attendees a bit about your background and how this is kind of your strong suit?
Okay, thank you, Brock. I am a graduate of UCR. I had a double major in English and comparative literature, then went to UCLA to get my PhD in Renaissance English literature. Have been a college professor for most of my adult life, teaching at Santa Clara University, and then went back to school, got a master's in counseling. One of my strengths seems to be love of learning. I am now a positive psychology and career coach, and I write a number of nonfiction books about how people can really flourish using techniques from positive psychology, discovering their strengths, and going on to make a positive difference in their lives and in our world.
That's really great. And we're really excited to have you and your expertise here to share a bit more. So before we dive into the presentation, I think it's important for us just to touch on the topic of, why is it important for folks to understand, recognize what their strengths are and how to really leverage them?
Wow, that's the subject of my entire presentation. I think going back to the classical times and the Renaissance, it's important to know ourselves, to know who we are, what we value, what we're good at, what we love to do, so that we can match our inner life with our external possibilities and find the right career path that's going to really help us flourish and find meaning, joy, and purpose, and have a good life.
Perfect. Well, without further ado then, like I said, we're going to dive in now. Diane's going to give a presentation on how to best really leverage your strengths. And then following that, we'll be able to take some of our audience Q&As, but feel free to submit those throughout. If there's something that she mentions that you want her to follow up on, feel free to send it in that Q&A at the bottom, and we'll make sure to touch on it. So I'll hand it over now to Diane and be back in a bit with the Q&A later. So Diane, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to have our first slide up there. Okay, today's webinar, we're going to be looking at what strengths meant in the Renaissance and what they mean for us today, discovering your own unique strengths, becoming a detective, finding out what's out there and how it matches with who you are, preparing for interviews, recognizing the advantages and the downsides of strengths, and then discovery, growth, and problem solving, which in the 21st century, we're all challenged to do and be. So we'll have some resources at the end and a Q&A. And next slide, please. Okay, so in the Renaissance, my PhD is in Renaissance literature, so you're going to have to bear with me here. Something really fascinating happened. In the Middle Ages, in terms of work, only priests, monks, and nuns were believed to have a calling, to have special gifts. They were called by God to use them in a spiritual path. And everyone else just worked to survive, to put food on the table and shelter, and just one day to the next. Then in the Renaissance, theologians and artists started believing and teaching that everyone had a unique set of strengths and was called to use them to serve their neighbors and to serve God. Okay. Whoa, we are getting, okay, back to the slides. Yes, back to the Renaissance. So we tend to look for things if we believe that they're there. And this change in perspective brought about, I think, the dawn of the Renaissance, leading to unprecedented contributions in science, philosophy, religions, medicine, politics, and the arts. People explored our planet, discovered new worlds, discovered new possibilities, discovered that the Earth was not the center of the universe or the solar system, but that the sun was. All kinds of new possibilities. And then, of course, you have Renaissance art, Renaissance literature, a dramatic rise in literacy and creative thinking. Why? Because people believed they had these treasures, these strengths within them, and they were challenged to discover them and use them. One example is a young boy in the English countryside whose parents could only sign their names with an X, who found, next slide, please, his calling on the London stage as William Shakespeare. Imagine the generation gap between Shakespeare and his parents. Okay. Again, because he believed he had special gifts and he found them. Thanks to Shakespeare, a lot of us are very grateful that he did. Next slide, please. So what has happened hundreds of years later is that positive psychology research has shown that, as in the Renaissance, we too, each individual has a unique set of gifts, and that when we develop them and use them, we become happier, more successful, have greater health, both emotional and physical, and flourish in our lives. So we're going to be talking about those strengths or gifts today. Next slide, please. Your strengths. Well, there are different kinds of strengths. Actually quite a few years ago now, not as far back as the Renaissance, but in 2004, positive psychologists culminated this incredible global study that they did of all the cultures on the planet, going back in time from the 21st century back to the earliest recorded history, literature, philosophy, religion, and looked at what they valued, what they considered character strengths. And amazingly enough, despite all the differences that we have with other countries and other cultures, and you can see that on the news, all of these cultures agree that there are 24 character strengths that are common to humankind. We can agree on something, and that these 24 character strengths are wisdom, creativity, curiosity, open-mindedness, love of learning, courage, perseverance, integrity, honesty, vitality, love, kindness, loyalty, teamwork, leadership, fairness, compassion, humility, gratitude, appreciation of beauty, hope, spirituality, and a sense of humor, which is a survival tool in this world. There is a study that you can take, a survey, which will be listed in the resources, so that you too can find out what your top character strengths are. Okay, those are character strengths. We also have talents. Some of you have a natural talent in art, music, or athletic ability. Some of us have computer programming skills that we've developed in this life. We're not born with them, we've developed them. The ability to play tennis, to ski, do public speaking, technical and creative skills. And we all have a skill of connection with people, nature, and animals. As human beings, we have a need to be connected, and there's research on that too. So all of those. Next slide, please. So recent research has shown that people who use their top strengths, the top 5, which psychologists have called their signature strengths, every day for a week, significantly increase their happiness. And other research has shown that people are happier, healthier, and more successful when they use their top strengths. However, surveys by the Gallup organization have found that most people in the United States, Britain, Canada, France, Japan, and China spend more of their time focusing on their weaknesses than on their strengths. And the research is cited down there at the bottom of the slide. But, why do we do that? Why do we focus more on what we're not good at than focusing on what we're good at? May have to do with our culture, may have to do with perfectionism, may have to do with the spelling tests that we used to get in elementary school, at least I did, which marked in red the words that we got wrong. So we focused on those instead of all the ones that we got right. So that to change our focus and to look for what we do well and to really focus on that and develop that is our challenge for today. Next slide, please. So now you get to have a discovery exercise. This is one of my favorite places of discovery, which is a beach up here in Northern California. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to take a few moments, close your eyes, and meditate on a time. And please join me in this now. Take a deep breath and close your eyes. Just release it gradually. And as you do, think of a time, one of many times, whatever comes to your mind. Could be last week, last year, in your childhood, a time when you felt joyfully, energetically yourself. You were doing something that made you feel a real sense of joy, energy, glad to be alive. And as you reach back in time for that experience, where were you? What were you doing? Who was there with you? Were you by yourself, or was there someone else there? And then gently open your eyes and write down what you were doing. And then list at least 3 strengths you were using. And there are no right or wrong answers. It's just what you were doing, what you were feeling, what strengths you were using, and you can look and see the strengths up there on the slide. I did this exercise along with you, and what came to my mind was one night in the dorms at UCR, I was sitting and talking to some of my friends about life, about our questions, about meaning. And it was so exciting, just being there, talking about ideas. But all of a sudden, the light started to look funny and changed. And we realized that the sun was coming up, that we had indeed talked until dawn. Have you ever done that? Okay, so strengths, obviously love of learning, a sense of connection with the people, my friends, my roommate and my friend, and a sense of teamwork, maybe. So, what were you doing? What were your 3 strengths? And then that's just a preview, right? You can also look at what you loved to do when you were a child. Did you love to play outside? Do you have a love of nature? Did you love playing a team sport? Do you have a strength of teamwork? You can find out your character strengths by taking the free viacharacter.org survey, which takes about 10 minutes. And there's a link here. There will be a link in the resources at the end of this presentation. So next slide, please. So remember those strengths, and you will be discovering some more when you take the character strengths survey. So we're going to be now, instead of trying to fit into an external structure, a job, a career, to think about, first of all, looking within, discovering your strengths and connecting with them and discovering your uniqueness and finding a match. So here I'm going to tell you a few stories. First, beginning with recent graduates, then mid-career professionals, and finally a midlife transition. So some of these people whose names have been changed are my former students and clients. We have Susie, who was a 2019 graduate, who got a Fulbright scholarship to go to India, helping women solar entrepreneurs. And she was delighted. She loves, helping people, creativity, kindness, and she was also a really talented writer. But what happened in 2020, as we all recall, was COVID. So poor Susie was sent home after being there and feeling a real sense of joy and meaning, sitting at home in her parents' house, feeling frustrated and stuck. What could she do? Well, she wrote about these women, their stories, what they had done, bringing solar lamps and solar cook stoves into their homes. And some of their homes were made out of plastic tarps. So it was very dangerous for them to cook with fire in these flammable structures. Now they had cook stoves, now they had lamps so that they could read and their children could study at night. Really was changing their lives. So Susie wrote about these women and what they discovered and published some of her inspiring stories online and used some of them to apply for a graduate school at Oxford University, where she's now in the PhD program, preparing for a career in international relations to help more people discover new possibilities. So using her strengths of creativity, kindness, and her writing talent. We also have Steve, who graduated last year. Was a chemistry major. He had been pre-med, but that didn't work out. His grandfather had been in the wholesale food business, and the whole family loved good Italian cooking. What did he do? His strengths were curiosity, love of learning, and he had scientific skills from his studies of chemistry and love of food. He's now working in the Impossible Burger field, creating vegetarian meat, combining his strengths, finding new possibilities. Next slide, please. Okay, the other way. Yeah, there we go. We've got Rick, mid-career, midlife adjustments. Rick was a librarian who loved photography. And he dreamed of becoming a professional photographer in San Francisco. So he built his portfolio, took classes, really refined his ability, moved up to San Francisco to follow his dreams, and it was miserable, lonely, disoriented. Why? His top strengths were creativity, but also teamwork, kindness, working with others, and connection. And he missed having a regular job where he had coworkers that he could make friends with and talk to over coffee. He was just all alone out there. So this did not work for him. Reassessing, he became a staff photographer for the local newspaper and began to thrive. Again, you need to connect all your strengths, not just one, but all your top strengths sometimes to make a big change. We also have Sarah, who got a PhD in neuroscience. Her parents are both scientists. She had strong scientific skills. And after she got her degree, she was sitting in a pharmaceutical lab doing, research all day, feeling like, what was this all about? Feeling disgusted and frustrated. So her top strengths are connection, kindness, curiosity, and courage. And it took courage for her to go back to school and get her MD, become a doctor. But she now finds fulfillment in caring for her patients, connecting with people using a skill of kindness. Next slide, please. We have Linda, who was married after getting her teaching credential and teaching for a couple of years. She had homeschooled her 2 sons, and then they went away to college. And so she said, well, now what do I do? She was thinking maybe of going back to teaching, getting a master's degree, refreshing her skills, but that would take time and expense. And she really needed to make money because her 2 sons were in college. Think about that, tuition. Her strengths are love of learning, connection, kindness, and creativity. So using her creativity, in early 2020, she created a business website, opened up her own tutoring practice, which filled up almost overnight with parents who were concerned about their children's remote learning. So now Linda is flourishing in her new business, making a good income, connecting with all these young people, helping them learn and enjoying the process, using her strengths of love of learning, connection, kindness, and creativity. Next slide, please. So like all these people, it's up to all of us to keep checking in about our strengths and then become a detective and find out what's out there so we can connect what's inside of us with what's out there. To learn about companies that seem like a good match using curiosity and love of learning, you can use your strengths, you see, to do this. To do information interviews with the Alumni Association, find alumni who are doing something that you're interested in and meet with them, either Zoom or coffee or whatever, and ask them some interesting questions, connection, love of learning, and follow your intuition when you're doing this. This can make a major difference. When I was coming to college age, my parents told me they couldn't afford to send me to college. And so I got some little part-time jobs and summer temp jobs working in office work to try to figure out how I could support my education. And I was driving down 14th Street one day at the end of the week in my parents' old red Volkswagen. And all of a sudden I got this strong sense of intuition or something that said, you're a writer, you should work there, driving right by the Press Enterprise. So I turned the car around, went into their parking lot, walked in the door and said, hi, as a shy teenager, which I was. I'm Diane Dreher. I'm a writer. I'd like to apply for a job, which took all the courage I had. And they ushered me upstairs to the personnel office, said, fill out some paperwork. I did. And they said, our college intern just gave notice this morning. Can you start work on Monday? They hadn't even advertised the job yet. Yes, absolutely. It was a wonderful job. Newspaper offices are open 24/7, so I could work it around my class schedule at UCR. I gained a lot of confidence working with all these professional writers, and it was an exciting place to be. So follow your intuition as well, and use your strengths as resources on the quest. Hope, gratitude, yes, write thank you notes when you interview people, and a sense of humor, which is a survival tool. Next slide, please. You can also use your strengths for interviews. Again, information interviews give you an inside view of the career area. You can ask the person what their greatest sense of joy is at that job and what's most frustrating, and then afterwards send a thank you note. I realize you've probably heard this, but nobody does this anymore. And when you send a thank you note, people remember you. So use gratitude and curiosity and other strengths to do this. Job interviews. Instead of feeling like their power over you, the idea is you're interviewing them too. So do your homework, love of learning, curiosity, right? Go to their website, find out about the company, and come up with good questions. Do you really want to work there? Check it out. You can also connect with your top strengths and connect those strengths with their mission. If the job you're applying for uses a lot of teamwork, and one of your VIA character strengths is teamwork, you can talk about that and say, one of my top character strengths from the VIA survey is teamwork, and then refer to the fact that you were I don't know, on a sports team or did some kind of teamwork in college, and say that you'd like to work with teams and to help bring out the best in people. Okay, next slide, please. Now, strengths are really resources that we can draw upon. However, if you do too much of a good thing, they can become weaknesses. Those of you who remember Shakespeare's tragedy Hamlet know that he was a deep thinker and was pursuing spiritual questions. But all that thinking made it take till the very end of the play for him to finally act, right? Too much thinking, not enough action. Thinking is good, but it can lead you to postpone taking action sometime. Another strength, if you're doing an internet search of companies that you'd like to work for, and your top strength, one of them is curiosity, which is mine, that can lead you off course into distractions. Have you ever been looking for something, doing research on the internet, and thought, ooh, that looks interesting, and you find that you've been, I don't know, off on a tangent for a good half hour or more? Or the strength of perseverance. It's a wonderful strength. It can help you overcome obstacles and hang in there and reach your goal. But perseverance can also keep you stuck in an unproductive situation because you feel like you've got to stick with it, even though it's not working for you. In a dead-end job, for example, I'm going to persevere. What does that mean? So next slide, please. Connection and community. One of these wonderful things about the job search is that you don't have to do it alone. Whenever we have a big goal, it's nice to be part of a team. You can, get together with other people who are also looking for new jobs, meet with friends dealing with similar challenges, give each other moral support, advice, sometimes compassion when they need it. And then you can celebrate each other's wins and victories. In my own life, I graduated from UC Riverside in June, and that next fall, there I was at UCLA in the PhD program with a graduate fellowship, and I met some of the other grad students at the first day of class, and most of them already had master's degrees. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a first generation college student. Look at all these smart people in my class. I'm going to flunk out. This was troubling. So for the first midterm in one of our lit classes, I decided I would invite all my smart colleagues over to my apartment for a study session and provided pizza with my graduate fellowship. And we ate pizza, discussed, what we thought was going to be on the midterm, shared ideas, brainstormed. We all did well on the midterm. And guess what? We became really good friends. We helped each other, and we all survived and managed to thrive in graduate school. So some of them were probably nervous about grad school too, but we helped each other. And it was great. We didn't have to do it by ourselves. So organize pizza sessions with your colleagues, working on, finding the right job, give each other moral support. Also, you can connect with a mentor. You don't have to do it alone. Some of your former professors would probably love to hear from you. As a college professor myself, I love to hear from my former students. I like to see what they're doing out there in the world. And yes, they get moral support. I write them letters of recommendation. Some of them know people. Some of your professors might know someone that, is looking to hire someone. You never know. So stay in touch with a former professor. You can also find a career coach at Alumni Career Services. You don't have to do it alone. In fact, it's more energizing, more empowering, and more fun to work with other people when you're headed toward a new goal. Okay, next slide, please. Resources. There are lots of resources here we have the VIA Character Strength Survey. It's free. It takes 10 minutes. You can sign in with just your demographic information. And there's a link right here. And there will also be resources sent to you. A great resource is the Alumni Career Services for connections and coaching. You can meet with a UCR alum who's in a field that you're interested in going and doing an information interview. LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn yet, you need to be, because it's a great way to meet people and to build your network. I wrote a book called Your Personal Renaissance, 12 Steps to Finding Your Life's True Calling, which has some clues about how to connect with your strengths and move forward toward a career that brings you a sense of joy and meaning and success. And also, I'd love to hear how leveraging your strengths is working for you. So you can email me, and here's my email address, ddreher@scu.edu. So enough talking from me right now. I would love to hear some of your questions and have a great discussion.
All right. Well, thank you, Diane, for this great presentation. Again, this was super helpful and really interesting as well. So really appreciate you taking the time to share. And like I said, everyone will get this in the follow-up, so you'll be able to see these slides there. But now we'd love to hear from you what questions you have. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to submit those down in the Q&A down there at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those live here on the call. I don't see any quite yet, so I'll just kind of kick us off. Again, make sure you're submitting your questions down at the Q&A section. But you talked a bit at the beginning about how folks should really focus in on their strengths and not as much on what would maybe be their weaknesses or maybe not their strengths. Is there any, is there any research to suggest that, you can focus a little on those, or kind of how do you go about looking at your maybe weaknesses? Is that something you should improve upon, or really should focus on your strengths?
That's a good question. I don't think it should be either or, but to really, when we're thinking about choosing a career, to find something that really capitalizes on your strengths. If, for example, you want to be, let's see, what's a career that would, you want to become a librarian, for example. Okay, you love books, you love reading, but these days, librarians need to know technology. And if you're only good at books and reading, great, that's terrific. But in order to be a librarian now, and if your weakness, if you don't know how to use, the internet, I don't know anyone who doesn't know how to use the internet, but I'm sure there may be somebody out there. Okay, you need to learn how to use the internet. You need to work that up, because that's what that career now requires. Yeah. So to focus on your strengths in terms of choosing a career, and then going out and being the detective and finding out what the career requires. And then if you don't have that, then building that up too. But instead of just focusing on your weaknesses to begin with, thinking, oh dear, I'm terrible at public speaking, and that just makes it, or I'm terrible at technology or something. That doesn't give us anywhere to go for a career. It just makes us feel bad.
Yeah, well, that's really helpful. Thank you. Still don't see any questions in our Q&A yet, so reminder to our folks here, you can submit those down to Q&A and we'll get to them. I guess another question then that I can bring up is for folks that are maybe wanting to pivot and make a career change, and maybe to a field that maybe they don't feel as strong in, what suggestions would you maybe give them in regards to kind of figuring out how they're reutilizing strengths in a way maybe they haven't done in their careers in the past?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of people, especially with COVID, who have gone through a lot of self-searching, and have found out, I don't really like this career that I've been in for the last 10 years or whatever, but they were too busy working from day to day to even notice that. Yep. One very important way is to have time to really contemplate, to go within, to find out, is this working for me or not? And COVID has brought a lot of suffering to a lot of people, but it's also given people a break from their routine. When we're in routine, we don't really start asking deep questions about, is this meaningful to me? You just get up and go and do it, from one day to the next. So we've had a lot of enforced isolation and a lot of enforced introspection, which is good. A lot of people are questioning what they've been doing. This is a perfect time to take the VIA character survey and to really find out what your top character strengths are. And to also be thinking about what you loved to do when you were a child. Because a lot of people will put their childhood dreams on hold, and they take a job right out of college to just start making money and making car payments or whatever it is. And they get stuck, in that routine. So coming out of COVID with the great resignation, as they call it, okay? People don't need to be resigned to a fate of living a life that is not meaningful. Look for those strengths and try to find something that helps you connect with your strengths. Start, first of all, discover your strengths, do some self-inquiry, take the VIA character survey, and then start using those strengths. Because using the strengths and find new ways to use them will help us wake up to new possibilities. There are, there's, for example, the librarian that I was talking about in my example, who became a professional photographer. He had a nice job at a library, but that just wasn't fulfilling for him. So he started, working on his creativity, took photography classes, developed his ability, and then became a professional photographer, use it at a newspaper where he could find colleagues and coworkers, as well as use his creativity. So it's important for us to know who we are in order to know where we want to go in life. So to look within, to discover our strengths, and to start using them, start developing them, and then kind of see where they take you. And then it's a perfect time to do information interviews through the alumni, career connections. You can talk to somebody who's doing something that kind of intrigues you and check it out. It's a detective, it's a treasure hunt, really. And you have deep treasures inside of you. We all do. All the people on this call, on this webinar do. And, there's a challenge now to go within, to discover what really makes us feel alive, puts us in a flow state, all the rest of that. And then go for it and find out a way to get there in a professional way.
Perfect. Yeah, I know a lot of us definitely did a lot of that deep reflecting in our quarantine. So I totally get where you're coming from. We have a question from one of our participants. Do you have any advice for how to show your strengths to a potential employer?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Okay. You have presumably checked out the employer, gone to the website, found out, what they specialize in. Are they making Impossible Burgers? Or what are they doing, right? And if you've done an information interview with somebody who works there, you'll get a sense of what the corporate structure is like. Do they work in small teams? Do they encourage people to do innovation? All right, so you have some of those thoughts, and then you look at your strengths. And if one of your top strengths is creativity, then you can talk about, something creative that you've done, maybe in college, maybe in your current job or life, and how you could apply that to the company. So I've always been interested in creativity, and I see that you have a lot of emphasis on innovation in your work. I'd like to work in a place that would enable me to use my strength of creativity. One of my former students was unhappy because his top strength was gratitude. And he said, how am I going to use that in a job? Okay. Well, he did a really good job. He did some brainstorming. I said, corporate culture, people thrive when they're acknowledged. If you're a leader and you have gratitude, you're going to thank people for doing a good job. And what does that do? That gives them a sense of purpose. It makes them feel included. It raises morale, gives them positive reinforcement. They'll do more of it. So gratitude is an incredible leadership strength. So find a creative way to connect some of your top strengths with the job that you're applying for, and say, I'd like to bring in, whatever your top strengths are. It'll really impress people, because most people don't do this in interviews. Okay.
It's a great question. I'd love to maybe push a little more too, in that, obviously with the pandemic and so much moving virtual, how have you seen that maybe change a little, in that, maybe the way we're using our strengths are a little different when it's via a Zoom screen, or like, how do you convey that a little different when so much more is online than we were previously?
That's that's another advantage, disadvantage. It's like yin and yang in Eastern philosophy. The disadvantage is that, you're not connecting personally with the person. I mean, we're all connected virtually, however. The advantage in Zoom is that people don't have to commute, and that we can connect, through miles of different spaces. I don't know how far some of the people are away in this call, but I lecture for the Positive Psychology Guild in the UK from my home in Northern California. So it gives us a possibility of connecting with people, far away, that we would not be able to connect with. So, our access is improved. How can we connect better on Zoom? I think some mindfulness practices would be helpful to really learn to focus, because some of my students in my remote classes the last couple of years would zoom out after a lot, the eyes would glaze over, or else they turn off their cameras and they go do something else and then they come back. So to really, take deep breaths, be mindful, and realize that we have real human beings there, and virtual or remote, we need to connect. So I think Zoom kind of encourages us to use ways of connecting that we may not have been as conscious about before.
All right, so we do have time for another question or so. So if folks have them, again, please submit them in the Q&A down there at the bottom. But I did want to ask you about the VIA strengths questionnaire. Can you maybe share a bit more about what that process looks like? It's a free resource, correct?
It's a free resource. It was developed initially by Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman, two of the founders of positive psychology, and a lot of colleagues. And it's a validated, international survey. It's not like one of these little questionnaires that you take in I don't know, one of these popular magazines. What are your, no, this is real. And it's valid. It's a lot more valid than the Myers-Briggs, actually, which was not a validated survey, but which has become very popular. People say, oh, I'm an intuitive introvert or whatever. These are really internationally recognized character strengths. And the whole survey itself it's very, very valid. It's also really easy to take. You just click on the viacharacter.org and click on the free survey. And you can then get, you can download your top strengths after about 10 minutes of answering questions. I've published 2 validated surveys myself, not this one, obviously. This is an international one. But you have to go through a lot of care to make sure that the questions really make sense and that they really measure what they're supposed to measure. And these people have done that. So it's a good survey. It's free. Viacharacter.org will then try to sell you certain other things that you don't need to buy. But you can just take their free survey and use it for your own, edification.
Perfect. Yeah, I know I've taken it myself, and I've also taken the Gallup Strengths Quest one, and it's really interesting because it's always the same type of strength. So it really shows that they're
Yeah, they've validated each other then. I'm curious, I have a question for you, Brock. What are some of your top strengths?
Yeah, so mine are very like interpersonal, like communication, empathy. Those type are most of my top ones. I'm very about building the relationship before diving in.
Oh, great. Well, see, and that connects with what you do with the alumni center, and you're connecting with people all the time. So you found a good match.
Exactly. So see, it works, folks.
Yeah, right. It works. I mean, it's like trying on different shoes, some things fit and some things don't. It's important to try on a lot of different possibilities as we're discovering our strengths. And then when we find something that really connects with our strengths, we're able to really make a contribution and we feel good about it. Yeah, my top strengths, curiosity, as I said, love of learning, spirituality, creativity, and connecting with people. So,
I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're wrapping up here at the end. So now I'd love to invite Diane, as we kind of finish up the webinar here, for you to leave some some lasting advice for folks that are here as they're looking at their job search or making a pivot. Maybe some last advice you'd like to leave for folks.
Okay. I'd like to remind people, I guess, that this is a really important time in our world's history. The whole planet is going through a transition on many levels, so that you're not alone if you're, seeking a new job or in a mid-career transition or something. It's a really valuable time then for all of us to bring forward our strengths, to really make a good match so that we can not only develop our own abilities and flourish in our own lives, but so that we can make a big contribution to what I see as a possible new renaissance in our world. We need to find solutions to a lot of major problems. We have global warming. We have all kinds of drought and issues here. We have people who are developing new inventions, new possibilities. This is a time to really put your energy out there, discover your strengths, and to realize that we're all on a kind of treasure hunt to discover those strengths. And you all, I was born in Kentucky, so you all have a lot to offer. You have a treasure within you that can become new possibilities around you. So I encourage you and challenge you all to discover your strengths, to see it as a treasure hunt. It's not, a sense of desperation, like I've got to get a job. Well, there are lots of jobs out there. Okay, this is a really powerful time to be looking, but we all need to first look within so we can make a good match and make a positive difference in the world.
Well, thank you, Diane. And this has been really helpful. And I know we got off to a rocky start, but I think this was a wonderful session to really help folks really reflect and think about what they have to offer. And I hope our folks here were able to take away a lot from this. So on behalf of the University of California, Riverside, thank you for joining us today for our Career Coach Workshop. It was a pleasure to connect virtually with all of you. And we really appreciate you taking time to be part of today's event and hope you've gained some valuable advice from Diane. I'd like to thank Diane for her time, generosity, and commitment to UCR, and the insights and advice you've shared today. Make me especially proud to be part of the UCR community and to have you a part of it. So you'll receive a follow-up email containing a recording of this webinar. And so please visit alumni.ucr.edu /career services for further details on upcoming episodes and to view recordings of our past webinars. Just like Diane was saying, we encourage folks to take advantage of our Career Coaches Network. She's one of a number of UCR alumni who are career experts and have steep discounts and even some free sessions for our UCR alumni. We also have the career network. So like Diane was saying, connect with UCR alumni who have jobs, who have a network. The career network is a free and online resource for UCR alumni and students. It's got opportunities to mentor, to be mentored, to network with other Highlanders, and there's even job boards on there. So if you haven't already joined this network, please do so at careernetwork.ucr.edu. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Diane, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.